My name is Angela, and I turned 32 on the day I finally broke. I still remember the weight of those words as they slipped from my mother's lips, barely audible above the restaurant chatter. "You're jealous of your brother Zev." 5 simple words that ignited the resentment I had been suppressing for years. The candles on my birthday cake flickered between us as I made a decision that would change everything. After supporting my family, especially my brother Zev, for over a decade, I was done. Before I continue my story, I would love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to make a difficult choice about family boundaries. I grew up in a typical middle-class neighborhood in suburban Denver. Our house was modest but comfortable, with a small backyard where Dad would grill on weekends and Mom would tend to her flower garden. Life was normal, predictable even, until my parents divorced when I was 15. Zev was only 12 at the time, still building model airplanes and collecting baseball cards. The split wasn't particularly dramatic, just the slow deterioration of two people who had fallen out of love. But it reshaped our family dynamics in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Almost overnight, I became the reliable one, the rock, while Zev transformed into the baby who needed protection. Mom would say things like, "Be understanding with your brother. This is harder on him." Or, "Zev needs extra attention right now." I never questioned it because that's what good older sisters do, right? They look out for their younger siblings. I got my first job at 16 working weekends at a local coffee shop. Initially, it was just to have my own spending money, but soon I was contributing to household expenses. Nothing major, just picking up groceries occasionally or buying school supplies. It felt good to help, to ease some of the burden from my mother's shoulders. College was a balancing act. While my friends were enjoying the full university experience, I was juggling classes with 2 part-time jobs. I maintained my scholarship by studying late into the night after shifts at the campus bookstore and a nearby restaurant. Meanwhile, Zev had started his first year at community college only to drop out after 1 semester. It wasn't the right fit, Mom explained, making excuses I willingly accepted. This became a pattern. Zev would start something, vocational school, another college program, an apprenticeship, only to abandon it within months. Each attempt was met with the same enthusiasm from our mother, each failure with the same understanding. "He just hasn't found his calling yet," she would say, as if his purpose would magically appear without any effort on his part. I stayed focused. After graduating with a degree in healthcare administration, I worked my way up from an entry-level position to becoming a medical office manager at a busy cardiology practice. The job was demanding but stable with good benefits and decent pay. I was proud of what I had accomplished through hard work and persistence. At 27, I finally moved into my own apartment, a small 1-bedroom place that was nothing fancy but entirely mine. I thought this milestone would signal a shift in responsibilities, but instead, the expectations only grew. When Zev lost his job at an electronics store, the 3rd position he had been fired from that year, my mother called me. "He just needs a little help until he gets back on his feet. Maybe you could cover his rent for a month or 2. That temporary arrangement stretched into 3 years. Before I knew it, I was paying for his downtown apartment, much nicer than my own, at $1,800 per month. The car he couldn't afford but insisted he needed for job interviews added another $450 monthly between payments and insurance. His credit cards were perpetually maxed out, required at least $300 in minimum payments. He was on my phone family plan because he couldn't deal with all that paperwork. And then there were the regular emergency cash requests, ranging from $100 to $500 each time. "I just need to get through this week," he would text. Or, "There was an unexpected expense." Or, my personal favorite, "I swear this is the last time." It never was the last time. Through it all, my mother remained Zev's biggest cheerleader. "He has such vision," she would gush during our weekly calls. "He just thinks differently than most people. That's why it's hard for him to fit into traditional jobs." What she never acknowledged was that at 29, Zev had never held a job longer than 6 months. He had never paid his own rent on time. He had never faced a consequence for his irresponsibility because I was always there, checkbook in hand, making sure he didn't have to. And I allowed it. I convinced myself it was temporary, that eventually he would get it together, that family takes care of family. I ignored the growing resentment, the sleepless nights worrying about my own financial future, the dreams I had put on hold. I had been saving for a house for years, but the down payment fund never seemed to grow. Every time I got close to my goal, another Zev emergency would arise. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 5 years, settling instead for the occasional weekend trip within driving distance. I worked overtime and picked up extra projects, not for advancement, but to ensure there was enough to cover both my needs and Zev's. I had put off pursuing a master's degree that would have opened more career opportunities because I couldn't manage the tuition on top of supporting 2 households. All these sacrifices were made silently, without complaint, because that's what the responsible one does, the reliable one, the one who has it all together. At least, that's what everyone thought. My 32nd birthday fell on a Tuesday, so I planned a small dinner celebration for the following Saturday. Nothing extravagant, just a reservation at my favorite Italian restaurant. I had invited my mother, Zev, and 2 close friends from work. Simple, relaxed, no fuss. Exactly how I wanted it. The morning of the dinner, Zev texted to ask what time he needed to be there. He had forgotten about my birthday entirely until our mother reminded him. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow it still stung. This was the same brother who had expected a lavish gift from me on his birthday 3 months earlier, which I had dutifully provided in the form of concert tickets that cost nearly $400. As I was getting ready for dinner, my phone buzzed with another text from Zev. "Hey sis, hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a situation. Could you transfer $300? Promise I'll can you back next week." I stare at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. This was my birthday, the one day that should have been about me. And here he was, asking for money again. I transferred the money without replying, a familiar hollow feeling settling in my stomach. As I applied my makeup, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. When had those fine lines appeared around my eyes? When had I started looking so tired? I thought about the life I had imagined for myself at 32, the milestones I thought I would have reached by now. I had wanted to be a homeowner by 30. The mortgage calculator on my phone showed that with what I had spent on Zev in the past year alone, I could have made a substantial down payment on a modest house in a nice neighborhood. Instead, I lived in a rental apartment with walls I couldn't paint and a leaky faucet the landlord kept promising to fix. I had wanted to visit Europe, to see the art and architecture I had only read about in books. The travel fund I had started 5 years ago had been depleted multiple times for Zev's emergencies. The credit card points I had been saving for flights had been used to book him a last-minute trip to a music festival last summer because this band might never tour again, Angela. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I had wanted to go back to school part-time to earn the credentials that would allow me to move into healthcare administration at a higher level. The brochures from the local university were still in my desk drawer, the application fee unpaid because the deadline had coincided with Zev's car breaking down, requiring costly repairs. All these deferred dreams weighed on me as I drove to the restaurant. I tried to push them aside, to focus on celebrating another year of life, but they clung to me like shadows. I arrived to find my mother and Zev already seated at the table. My friends had texted that they were running 15 minutes late due to traffic. Zev was studying the menu, pointing out the most expensive entree. My mother was nodding approvingly as if his ability to identify costly items was somehow impressive. "There she is, the birthday girl," my mother said as I approached, rising to give me a quick hug. Zev remained seated, offering a casual wave. "Sorry I'm late," I said, though I wasn't. I had arrived exactly at the reservation time. "No worries. We were just discussing what to order," Zev said. "The Wagyu steak looks amazing." I nodded, knowing that he expected me to pick up the check, as I always did when we dined together. I had already factored this into my monthly budget, setting aside extra to cover what would inevitably be an expensive meal. As we settled into conversation, Zev dropped his news. "So, I have some exciting updates," he announced, as if continuing a discussion we had already been having. "I'm thinking of leaving Westfield Electronics." Westfield was the computer store where he had been working for the past 4 months, his longest stretch of employment in recent memory. My heart sank. "Oh, why is that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It's just not challenging me creatively," he said, as if selling laptops and printers should somehow be a creative endeavor. "Plus, the hours are killing me. 9 to 5 is such an outdated concept." My mother nodded sympathetically. "Zev has always been more of a free spirit. I'm actually thinking of starting my own thing, something in the digital space. Content creation, maybe, or social media management." Translation: he was planning to quit his paying job to spend more time making TikTok videos or playing video games on live stream with no actual business plan or savings to sustain himself during the transition. I took a sip of water, trying to calm the anxiety rising in my chest. Every time Zev quit a job, the financial burden on me increased. More loans that were never repaid. More bills that somehow became my responsibility. "That sounds interesting," I managed, because what else could I say? Any expression of concern would be interpreted as a lack of support, any question about practicality as a lack of vision. It was then that I noticed neither of them had brought a gift, not even a card. I had received birthday wishes via text from coworkers I barely knew, yet my own family hadn't thought to bring even a token acknowledgement of the day. In that moment, sitting across from my brother, who was eagerly planning his next unemployment spell, and my mother, who enabled every poor decision he made, I felt a shift inside me. A quiet voice that had been whispering for years suddenly got louder. It said, "Enough. Enough." The waitress approached our table with menus and a warm smile. She asked if we were celebrating a birthday tonight. "Yes, it's my birthday," I confirmed, returning her smile. "Wonderful. Would you like to hear about our specials?" As she recited the evening's offerings, I noticed Zev's eyes light up at the mention of a $50 surf and turf plate. My mother nodded encouragingly at him, then turned to me. "You should treat yourself tonight, Angela. It's not every day you turn 32. The irony of her suggesting I treat myself when I would be paying for all three of us wasn't lost on me. Still, I nodded politely and ordered the chicken parmesan, my usual choice. More for its reasonable price than my actual preference. Zev predictably ordered the surf and turf along with an appetizer. My mother selected one of the more expensive pasta dishes. By the time drinks were added, I was mentally calculating a bill well over $150. My friends arrived shortly after we ordered, bringing actual gifts. Megan had bought me a lovely scarf in my favorite shade of blue, while Tara presented a gift card to the bookstore we frequented. Their thoughtfulness made the absence of anything from my family even more glaring. The conversation flowed as we ate, though I noticed how my mother continually steered it back to Zev. When Megan asked about my recent work certification, my mother nodded, briefly, before interrupting. "That reminds me, Zev, tell everyone about your new project idea." Zev launched into an elaborate description of his plan to become a social media consultant, despite having no experience or training in the field. My friends exchanged glances but nodded politely. "It's going to require some initial investment," he explained, cutting into his steak, "equipment, software, that kind of thing. But the potential return is huge."
Sounds like you've got it all figured out, Tara said, her tone carefully neutral. He's always been a visionary, my mother beamed. Even as a child, he saw things differently than others. I pushed my chicken around my plate, my appetite diminishing with each passing moment. The weight of expectations, of always being the responsible one while watching Zev receive praise for simply existing, pressed down on me. As the main course dishes were cleared, the waitress returned with a small chocolate cake I had pre-ordered and paid for when making the reservation. It wasn't fancy, just a simple round cake with happy birthday written on white icing. That kind of looks small, Zev commented as the cake was placed in front of me. It's perfect, I said firmly, unwilling to let him dampen this small pleasure I had arranged for myself. You could have gone for something more exciting, my mother chimed in. Remember those elaborate theme cakes we used to get Zev for his birthdays? I do remember. I remember because I had paid for the last 3 of them, each costing over $100 from a specialty bakery. My own birthdays had always been more modest affairs. I like chocolate cake, I said simply, forcing a smile as the waitress lit the candles. As the small flames flickered, casting a warm glow over the table, my mother leaned in closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but her words were crystal clear. You're jealous of your brother's potential. You always have been. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Jealous of Zev, the brother who at 29 had never supported himself, the brother whose rent I paid, whose car I financed, whose emergencies constantly drained my savings. Something inside me snapped. Years of resentment, of swallowed protest, of deferred dreams all converged in that moment. Then let him pay his own bills, I said, my voice quiet but firm. My mother drew back, surprised by my response. What did you say? I said, if Zev has so much potential, then let him pay his own bills.
A heavy silence fell over the table. My friends shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension that had suddenly erupted in our corner of the restaurant. Zev let out a forced laugh. Someone's grumpy on her birthday, he said, attempting to diffuse the situation with his typical dismissive humor. My mother joined in with a nervous chuckle. Birthdays can make us all a little emotional. Now, make a wish and blow out your candles before the wax drips all over your cake. I looked at the flickering candles, then at my brother and mother. In that moment, I made my wish. Not for the things I had always wanted, but for something more fundamental. The courage to change what I could no longer accept. I blew out the candles in one decisive breath. We should talk about my investment in your new business venture, my mother said to Zev, clearly eager to move past the awkward moment. Actually, Zev interjected, turning to me, I was hoping Angela might want to get in on the ground floor. It could be really profitable for her. I stared at him incredulously. After everything, after the thousands of dollars I had already given him with nothing to show for it, he was asking for more? What do you think, Angela? It would be nice to support your brother's dreams for once. For once. The absurdity of her statement was the final straw. I reached for my purse, pulled out enough cash to cover my portion of the meal, plus a generous tip, and placed it on the table. Thank you for coming to my birthday dinner, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotions churning inside me. I need to go now. But we haven't had cake yet, my mother protested. You can split my piece, I replied, standing up. I nodded to my friends who looked concerned but understanding. I'll call you both tomorrow. With that, I walked out of the restaurant, ignoring my mother's calls behind me. For the first time in years, I had put myself first. And though my hands were shaking as I got into my car, I also felt an unexpected sense of relief. The dam had broken. There was no going back now. The drive home was a blur.
Tears streamed down my face as years of suppressed emotions finally found release. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, my sadness had crystallized into something else: determination. I kicked off my heels at the door and went straight to my desk. Opening my laptop, I began creating a spreadsheet. Every bill, every loan, every financial obligation I had taken on for Zev. I dug through bank statements, credit card bills, Venmo transfers, every record I could find. As the numbers added up, my breath caught. In the past year alone, I had spent $36,400 on my brother. $36,400. The figure seemed impossible, yet there it was, in black and white. That was more than enough for a down payment on a modest home in the Denver suburbs. It was enough for a master's degree. It was enough for the European vacation I had dreamed of since college. Instead, it had vanished into the black hole of Zev's irresponsibility. No more, I decided. Not another dollar. I opened a new document and began listing every financial connection between us. 1. Rent payment for downtown apartment, $1,800 per month. 2. Car payment, $320 per month. 3. Car insurance, $130 per month. 4. Credit card minimum payments, $300 per month. 5. Phone bill on my family plan, $95 per month. 6. Streaming service subscriptions, $45 per month. 7. Gym membership, $65 per month. 8. Utility bills I often covered, $150 to $200 per month. 9. Regular cash loans, varying amounts. Next to each item, I noted what needed to be done to disentangle myself. For some, it would be as simple as removing my payment information. For others, like the apartment where I was the guarantor, it would require more formal notifications. I worked through the night, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating my determination. With each account I accessed, each payment I canceled, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. First, I called the apartment management company. Though it was after hours, I left a detailed voicemail explaining that I would no longer be serving as guarantor for Zev's lease. I followed up with an email stating the same, making it clear that I would fulfill my obligation through the end of the current month, but not beyond. Next came the credit cards. I removed my automatic payments from the 3 cards I had been paying minimums to. I took screenshots of the final payments processing, documentation that I had not left any outstanding balances as of that date. The car payment was trickier. My name was on the loan alongside Zev's, a mistake I had made when he insisted he needed reliable transportation for job interviews. I couldn't simply remove myself, but I could stop making payments. I sent a formal letter to the finance company explaining that I would no longer be contributing to the loan, with a copy to Zev. I removed him from my family plan effective at the end of the current billing cycle. I canceled the auto payments for his car insurance, streaming services, and gym membership. Our one joint checking account, which I had opened to make transferring money to him easier, was closed. I transferred the remaining balance, less than $100, to my personal account. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I had methodically severed every financial tie I could. My next step was composing an email to both Zev and my mother. I wrote and rewrote it several times, trying to find the right balance between firmness and compassion. The final version was simple and direct. Zev and Mom, as of today, I am no longer able to provide financial support for Zev's expenses. I have canceled all automatic payments and removed my payment information from all accounts. I have fulfilled all obligations through the end of this month, which provides 30 days of notice for alternative arrangements to be made. This decision is not up for discussion or negotiation. It is final. Angela. My finger hovered over the send button. Was I really going to do this? Would I be able to stand firm when the inevitable guilt trips began? What if Zev ended up homeless? What if my mother never spoke to me again? I thought of all the years I had put everyone else's needs before my own. I thought of my dwindling savings, my deferred dreams, and the growing resentment that was poisoning my relationship with my family. I hit send. Almost immediately, my phone began to ring. Zev's name flashed on the screen, followed by a series of text messages. "What the hell, Angela? Is this a joke? Call me right now." My mother's calls and texts followed soon after. "What have you done? We need to talk about this. You're being incredibly selfish." I turned off my phone, something I had never done before. The silence that followed was terrifying and peaceful. For the first time in years, I was truly unreachable, unavailable to solve everyone else's problems. I crawled into bed as the first light of dawn filtered through my blinds. Despite the emotional turmoil of the night, I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, more restful than any I had experienced in recent memory. When I woke hours later, I felt something unexpected: relief. The constant background anxiety that had become so familiar I barely noticed it anymore had lifted. The decision was made. The action was taken. Now I just had to stand my ground.
The next week was a hurricane of calls, texts, and unannounced visits. I had anticipated the backlash, but the intensity still took me by surprise. Zev's first reaction was disbelief, followed by anger, then panic as he realized I was serious. His texts oscillated between rage and pleading. "You can't just cut me off without warning. I thought we were family. What am I supposed to do about rent? It's due next week. Please, Angela, I swear I'll get my act together this time." My mother's approach was more calculated. First came the guilt trips. "How could you do this to your brother? After everything we've been through as a family, I never raised you to be this heartless." When those didn't work, she escalated to involving other family members. My aunt called to tell me how disappointed she was in my cruel behavior. My cousin sent a long text about how family should always come first. Even my father, who had been minimally involved in our lives since the divorce, reached out to understand what was going on. The most difficult moment came when Zev showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a staff meeting when the receptionist interrupted to tell me my brother was in the waiting room, refusing to leave until he spoke with me. I excused myself, my heart pounding as I walked to the reception area. Zev looked disheveled, his eyes red from what I assumed was either lack of sleep or crying. "You need to leave," I said quietly, aware of the patients in the waiting room and my colleagues just down the hall. "Not until you fix this," he insisted, his voice too loud for the professional setting. "They're going to evict me, Angela. Is that what you want? For your brother to be homeless?" "We can talk about this later, but not here," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the scene he was creating. "This is my workplace." "You don't get to decide when we talk about this," he shouted, causing several patients to look up in alarm. The office manager appeared beside me, her expression concerned. "Is everything all right, Angela? Do we need to call security?" The threat of security finally got through to Zev. He left, but not before delivering a parting shot loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hope you're happy with yourself. Mom was right. You've always been jealous of me." I returned to my meeting, my face burning with embarrassment, but I held my head high. My colleagues were kind enough not to mention the incident, though I knew it would be the subject of office gossip for days to come. That evening, my mother called. I had been screening her calls for days, but decided it was time to face her directly. "Zev told me what happened at your office," she began without preamble. "This has gone far enough, Angela. You've made your point." "This isn't about making a point," I replied. "It's about setting healthy boundaries." "Boundaries," she scoffed. "Is that what your therapist calls abandoning your family? Because that's what you're doing." I hadn't mentioned seeing a therapist, though I had been considering it. The fact that she jumped to that conclusion told me she knew on some level that the situation had been problematic. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said calmly.
I'm simply saying that at 29, Zev needs to be responsible for his own expenses. He's going through a difficult time right now, she argued. You know how sensitive he is. He's been going through a difficult time for years, Mom, and I've been supporting him through all of them. It's time for that to change. So what happens when he gets evicted, when his car gets repossessed? Where is he supposed to go? That's for Zev to figure out, I said, though the words were harder to say than I had expected. He's an adult. Well, I can't take him in, she declared. My house isn't big enough. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Her 3-bedroom house wasn't big enough for one additional person, yet my 1-bedroom apartment had somehow been the assumed backup plan all along. That's between you and Zev, I replied. I'm no longer involved in solving his housing situation. The conversation ended with my mother threatening to disown me if I didn't resume the payments. It was a dramatic declaration, especially considering she had never owned much to begin with. Still, the words stung, revealing just how conditional her love had always been. 2 weeks after my birthday dinner, I received notice that Zev's apartment complex had begun eviction proceedings. He had made no rent payment for the current month. The management company contacted me as the guarantor, but I referred them to my email withdrawing from that role. There would be legal implications to sort out, but I was prepared to face them. Around the same time, Zev's car was repossessed. He called me in tears from a bus stop, describing how the tow truck had come in the middle of the night. I listened sympathetically, but remained firm in my position. I'm sorry you're going through this, Zev, I said, but you've had the car for 3 years. You knew the payments were your responsibility. How am I supposed to get to job interviews without a car? The same way thousands of people in Denver do every day, public transportation. The family drama reached its peak at Sunday dinner at my aunt's house. I almost declined the invitation, sensing it was a setup, but decided facing everyone at once might be easier than the constant individual ambushes. I was right about it being a setup. The entire extended family was there, and it quickly became clear that the meal was actually an intervention designed to make me see reason. My aunt spoke first. We're all very concerned about the situation with Zev, Angela. We know you've always been the responsible one, but this seems extreme. My uncle nodded in agreement. Family helps family. That's just how it works. One by one, they weighed in, echoing the same sentiments my mother had been bombarding me with for weeks. I listened politely, waiting for them to finish. When the table finally fell silent, all eyes on me, I reached into my bag and pulled out my spreadsheet. I appreciate your concern, I began, but I'd like to share some context. I passed copies of the document around the table. This is a record of the financial support I've provided for Zev over the past year. $36,400. That's more than half my annual salary after taxes. The silence that followed was deafening. My relatives studied the numbers, their expressions shifting from righteous indignation to shock. This can't be right, my aunt said, finally, though her tone lacked conviction. I assured her every entry is documented. Bank transfers, payment receipts, everything. My cousin, who had been particularly vocal about my selfishness, let out a low whistle. 36,000? Seriously, Zez? Zev, who had been uncharacteristically quiet throughout the intervention, stared at his plate. I was going to pay her back, he mumbled. When? I asked, not unkindly. In all these years, you've never repaid a single loan? He had no answer for that. The truth is, I continued, addressing the whole table, I've been enabling behavior that isn't healthy for Zev or for me. He's never had to learn basic adult responsibilities because I've always been there to pick up the slack. Zev finally looked up. It's not like I don't want to be responsible, he said defensively. I just never learned how to manage all that stuff. Because I never let you, I acknowledged. And that's on me, but it can't continue. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine understanding in my family's eyes. Not complete agreement, perhaps, but at least recognition that the situation was more complex than they had assumed. As we prepared to leave my aunt's house that evening, she pulled me aside in the hallway. "I had no idea it was this much," she admitted quietly. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because I was taught that talking about money is inappropriate," I replied. "Because I was taught that family doesn't keep score, and that being responsible meant shouldering burdens silently." She nodded, her expression troubled. "I'm sorry, Angela. We should have seen what was happening." It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. Driving home, I felt the first stirrings of hope that this painful process might bring real change. 2 months after the birthday incident, reality set in. The eviction was final. Zev had to leave his downtown apartment and move in with a friend in a cramped studio. Without a car, job searching was harder. His stint at the computer store ended as expected. He stopped showing up after a week, saying the commute was unsustainable. My mother's tone changed. Her once accusatory calls were now tinged with exhaustion. "He's been on my couch for a week," she said. "I don't know what to do." "What do you mean?" I asked. "He sleeps till noon, spends all day on his phone, says he's networking or researching. He ate the last of my groceries and assumed I was buying extra for him." "Have you talked to him about contributing to expenses?" "With what money?" she snapped. "He doesn't have a job." "Then maybe that should be the priority." She was finally experiencing what I had dealt with for years, the entitled expectation that Zarv was everyone's responsibility. "I never realized how hard this was for you," she said. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. Meanwhile, I was finally using my money for myself. I opened a high-yield savings account just for my house fund. In 2 months, it held more than I'd saved the previous year. Watching the balance grow gave me a peace I hadn't known in years. I also enrolled in a weekend certification course for healthcare management software. What once felt like an impossible expense was now easily affordable. Most importantly, I was forming healthy relationships. My coworkers Megan and Tara became true friends. Girls' nights, hiking trips, book club gatherings, and I joined a support group for people recovering from financial abuse. For the first time, I understood I wasn't alone, and I wasn't to blame. "The hardest part," said Maria, who'd supported her brother for 15 years, "was realizing that helping him meant hurting him." Then 3 months after cutting Zev off, I got a surprising text. "Started a new job today. Customer service. Not glamorous, but honest work." I replied, "That's wonderful, Zev. I'm proud of you." A week later, found a small studio I can afford. Moving in next weekend. No luxury, no frills, but it was his. And it mattered more because he earned it. My mother was both relieved and surprised. "He's different lately, more focused. He even helped me with yard work without being asked." She told me he was budgeting, saving for a car. That shocked me more than anything. Zev was setting goals and working toward them. As he changed, so did I. I applied for a promotion I avoided for years, thinking I wasn't good enough, and got it. My boss noted how much more confident and focused I'd become. I hadn't realized how much energy I'd spent managing Zev's life. That energy now fueled my own growth. 4 months after the birthday, I met with a financial advisor. We reviewed my progress: stronger savings, better debt management, solid retirement contributions. You're in a good place. If you keep this up, you could buy a home in 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months. After years of barely scraping by, it felt like a miracle. But really, it was the result of one hard decision that changed everything for both of us.
That evening, I received a surprising text from Zev. Hey, I know this might sound weird, but would you want to grab coffee sometime? Not to ask for anything. I just want to talk. I owe you an apology, and I'd rather do it in person. I stared at the message. In all our years of financial entanglement, Zev had never reached out without needing something. After a few drafts, I responded, I'd like that. How about Saturday afternoon at that place on 5th Street? Perfect, 2 o'clock. I arrived early and chose a window seat. Zev walked in right on time. Gone were the designer clothes. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, his hair neatly cut. He looked grounded. Thanks for meeting me, he said. I wasn't sure you'd say yes. I almost didn't, I admitted. He ordered us both coffee, my treat. That small gesture meant a lot. Zev paying for anything was new territory. I owe you the biggest apology of my life, he began. Living on my own, budgeting money I actually earned, it's changed me. He stirred his coffee. You know what shocked me? Groceries. I thought I had enough money, barely got through a week. Despite myself, I smiled. It's expensive being an adult. I wasn't being an adult. You were, for both of us. He looked at me. I added it up. You spent over $90,000 on me in those 3 years. I inhaled sharply. I had focused on the recent $36,000, but the total was staggering. I never thanked you. I just expected it because we were family, because I was younger, because you kept giving. The honesty was painful but necessary. When Mom kicked me out, I expected you to rescue me, but I didn't even call because I realized every time I messed up, I just thought, Angela will fix it. I never thought about fixing it myself. His phone buzzed. He declined the call. Work? I asked. My supervisor. I told him I had a family meeting. This conversation matters more. Another change. The old Zev would have taken the call. How's the job? I asked. Hard. Call quotas, cranky customers, but satisfying. When I pay my own rent, it feels like an achievement. We talked for nearly 2 hours. He told me about cooking, riding the bus, saving for a car. The apartment's small, noisy, but it's mine. I earned it. As we stood to leave, he said, I know I can't pay you back, but cutting me off was the best thing that ever happened to me. Really? I was 29, pretending to be an adult. You enabled that. I needed to fall flat to learn how to stand. Outside, he added, I'm proud of you for having the courage to stop helping me. That must have been hard. It was. I felt guilty for months. You shouldn't have. You saved us both. Driving home, I realized I liked this version of my brother, not for what he could offer, but for who he was becoming. 2 weeks later, I got a handwritten note and a $50 check from Zev. Angela, this is the first payment. I know it's small, but I want to start. I'm committed to paying it back. Thank you for everything. I'm sorry it took me so long to grow up. I didn't cash it right away. I put it on my fridge, a reminder that people can change.
Every month, another check arrived. Always $50, always with the short update. He'd been promoted, bought a used Honda Civic, enrolled in night classes. Even my mother saw the shift. One day she admitted, "I think I failed both of you. I taught love meant sacrificing everything, and I taught Zev that love meant no consequences." "It's never too late to do better," I said. 6 months after I took back control of my finances, I made an offer on a 2-bedroom bungalow with hardwood floors and a backyard. The down payment came entirely from money I'd saved since cutting Zev off. Money that used to disappear into his chaos now went toward my future. When I called my mom to share the news, she said, "You've worked so hard for this." "I have," I replied, "and it feels incredible." Zev will be proud when he hears. The old me might have felt guilty buying a home while he lived in a studio. The new me knew we were both where we needed to be. The house closing was scheduled for a Friday in early October. I arrived at the attorney's office with documents in hand and anticipation in my chest. As I signed the papers, officially making the bungalow mine, I thought about how different life looked now compared to a year ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Zev. "Big day! So proud of you, sis. Can't wait to see your new place." His warmth still surprised me, sincere support without strings attached. That night, walking through the empty rooms, I felt peace. Every space represented choices I had made for myself. The kitchen for meals I wanted, a living room for friends without family drama, and a spare bedroom turned home office for the career I'd put on hold. Over the next weeks, I painted walls in colors I loved, bought furniture that reflected me, and planted herbs in window boxes. My mother visited a month later, pride mixed with regret in her eyes. "It's beautiful, Angela," she said. When she asked if I'd resented her for overlooking my sacrifices, I admitted, sometimes. She surprised me by acknowledging her role. "I made you feel like you couldn't speak up." It was the first time she had reflected so openly. Meanwhile, Zev continued to impress. He'd held his customer service job for 7 months and was even being considered for promotion. "I actually like having a routine," he told me. With stability, he was finally planning long-term goals, even night classes in business. 8 months after I stopped supporting him, Zev called. My stomach tightened, bracing for a money request. Instead, he said, "Mom's birthday is next week. I want us to go in on a gift together." His idea, restore her old family photo album. He offered $150, an amount he could afford. We collaborated, and when she opened the new album, she cried. It was the most thoughtful gift we'd ever given her, and Zev had led the effort. At the dinner, my mother told us, "I'm proud of you both. Zev for taking responsibility, Angela for setting boundaries. You saved our family." For the first time, it felt like true acknowledgement. 9 months after my birthday breakdown, I hosted Thanksgiving in my new home. Zev arrived early with cranberry sauce and flowers. As we cooked side by side, I realized this was what I'd always wanted family to feel like: reciprocal, warm, free of obligation. That evening, the conversation flowed easily. Zev made everyone laugh, my mother engaged thoughtfully, and there was no drama. As he helped clean up, Zev smiled. "This was perfect. Is this what normal families feel like?" "I think so. Or at least what ours feels like when we're healthy." 1 year after the birthday dinner that changed everything, I was preparing for another celebration, this time in my own backyard. String lights glowed on the maple tree I'd planted, herbs scented the air, and the table was set for 8. My mother, Zev, friends, colleagues, and a neighbor who'd become dear to me. As I arranged flowers, I thought about how much had changed in 12 months. A year earlier, I'd been weighed down by resentment and stress. Now, I was confident, financially stable, and surrounded by people who cared. Zev arrived first with wine and a wrapped gift. Inside was a monogrammed journal. "I noticed you've been writing in that old notebook," he said. It was thoughtful and personal, a clear sign of his transformation. During dinner, conversation turned to careers. Zev shared that he had just been promoted to team supervisor. "Helping others succeed is more rewarding than just focusing on myself," he said, glancing at me. My mother, quieter now, but far more self-aware after starting therapy, smiled proudly. When asked my own secret, I answered simply. I learned to set boundaries. Once I prioritized my well-being, everything else fell into place. Zev nodded. "Sometimes people have to let you fail to learn how to succeed." Later, in the kitchen, my mother handed me a letter. In it, she apologized for placing adult responsibilities on me, for enabling Zev, for dismissing my needs. But she also expressed gratitude. "You've shown us what healthy love looks like: support without enabling, care without sacrificing self-respect." Her words felt like the beginning of a new relationship between us. That night, Zev texted, "This birthday feels so different. I'm grateful every day you had the courage to stop enabling me. Love you, sis." The next morning, my financial advisor's update confirmed my savings and retirement were thriving. For the first time, money felt like a tool, not a source of fear. Later, Zev arrived with a folder. He had carefully tracked $800 in repayments, but said, "At this rate, I'll never repay you. Instead, I want to honor what you did by helping someone else." Inside was paperwork for a scholarship fund in my name, supporting low-income students in vocational training. "This is part of my future," he said. "You taught me the difference between enabling and empowering." 2 months later, I watched him present the first scholarship to a young woman completing her medical assistant program. "This exists because my sister showed me that real help means believing in someone's ability to help themselves." 18 months into my financial independence journey, I got a call from my mother, crying. "Angela, I need your help, but not the kind you think. It's about Jessica. She's been begging me to convince you to talk to her." Jessica, my cousin, had been supporting her brother Marcus for years. He had no job, mounting debts, and was entirely dependent on her. She had spent over $40,000, drained her savings, and even taken out loans. Exhausted, she wanted advice. When Jessica called, her story mirrored mine with Zev. "It's been 5 years of temporary," she said. I told her gently, "It ends when you end it. He won't change while you solve his problems." We spoke for 2 hours. I shared my guilt, backlash, and the eventual healing. When she asked, "What if he ends up homeless?" I replied, "Then he'll figure it out. People are resourceful when they must be." 3 weeks later, Jessica updated me. She had set a cutoff date, sent Marcus a clear email, and endured the fallout. Anger, guilt trips, even threats. But eventually, he got a grocery store job. "I feel scared, guilty, relieved, proud, all at once," she said. Inspired, Jessica started a blog about breaking financial codependency, and through it, I found an online community. Hundreds of people shared the same struggles, enabling relatives at the cost of their own lives. I began contributing, offering support, and a simple tool I called the growth test. Does your support build independence or prevent it? If it avoids consequences, it's enabling, not helping. 2 years after my birthday dinner breakdown, Zev invited me to see his new apartment, earned through another promotion. He proudly showed me the lease he signed with his own credit, the furniture bought with his savings. He said, "I used to think you abandoned me that night. Now I see you refused to leave me stuck in dependence. You forced me to discover who I could be." Driving home, I saw how far we'd all come. Jessica had broken free and was guiding others. Zev was mentoring new employees. My mother was in therapy, rebuilding healthier relationships. And I had grown too, promoted at work, building deeper friendships, living with confidence. Most of all, I'd learned that real love doesn't require self-sacrifice. Sometimes it means saying no, setting limits, and letting others face their own choices. The woman once silenced by guilt had become someone who gave freely but wisely, helping others by helping them find their own strength. 3 years after the birthday dinner that changed everything, I stood in a Denver hotel reception hall surrounded by colleagues, friends, and family celebrating my promotion to Regional Healthcare Administration Director. The role offered everything I'd once thought impossible: financial security, meaningful work, and fulfillment. Looking around, I realized everyone was there out of genuine care, not obligation. Zev sharpened his new suit, raised his glass. "I'm so proud of you." He had recently become a regional sales manager. "I've contributed $8,700 to the scholarships fund so far," he added. "It's not the $90,000 you spent on me, but every dollar has gone to empowerment, not dependence." My mother soon introduced me to Dr. Williams, her therapist. "Your story has become a case study for families struggling with enabling," the doctor explained. "You've shown that boundaries aren't walls, they're frameworks for healthy relationships." Hearing my mother acknowledge how her rescue attempts had hindered Zev was astonishing. That night, Jessica texted me. Marcus had been steadily employed for 18 months and was now engaged. He thanked me for forcing him to grow up. I showed Zev, who laughed. It's amazing how many people need to be pushed to realize they can stand on their own. Driving home, I reflected on what real revenge meant. Not punishment, but breaking destructive patterns. The results spoke for themselves. Zev thriving in his career and giving back through the scholarship program. My mother building healthier relationships. Jessica helping others escape financial codependency. I had built a secure, meaningful life, finally valuing myself not for what I provided, but for who I was. The ripple effects stretched outward through Jessica's blog, online communities, and the scholarship program. My journey had even become a resource for therapists. More profoundly, I had learned that boundaries are acts of love, allowing everyone to grow. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with Zev's message. "Thank you for saving us by saving yourself first. The best revenge really is a life well lived. Love you, sis." I typed back, "Love you too. Here's to healthy boundaries and second chances." The woman who once believed love meant self-sacrifice had become someone who gave wisely, who understood her worth, and who knew that sometimes the most loving act is stepping back. Victory wasn't about defeating others, it was about becoming the person I was meant to be. So I'll leave you with this. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Real help doesn't shield people from consequences. It empowers them to grow. The best revenge isn't punishment, but building the life you were meant to live. Here's to authentic relationships, healthy boundaries, and lives well lived.